Disclaimer: this story contains mature themes intended for adult viewers. Viewer discretion is advised. The belt was the first thing I touched. Not his hand, not his arm, his belt. My fingers curled around the leather, slow, deliberate. I didn't look at him, not yet, but I could feel his gaze heavy on me, as if he already knew where this was going. The quiet between us wasn't empty, it pulsed. We stood in the middle of our bedroom, the curtains half drawn, letting a sliver of late afternoon light cut across the floor. Dust particles floated lazily in the beam, yet the air felt too thick, too warm. I loosened the buckle with a soft clink, the sound breaking the stillness like a match striking. His breath changed. Just slightly, enough for me to hear it, enough for my pulse to catch. My knuckles brushed the edge of his shirt as I slid the belt free, feeling the warmth of him radiate against my skin. I didn't need to say a word. The belt slipped from my hands and landed on the hardwood with a muted thud that seemed louder than it should have been. Only then did I lift my eyes to his. We didn't blink. The space between us was barely a step, yet it felt like a cliff edge. His lips parted, like he was about to speak, but no sound came. I noticed the way his jaw tightened, the way his shoulders squared slightly, not in resistance, but in readiness. My shoulder brushed his as I moved closer, just enough to feel the heat through fabric. The faint scent of his cologne mixed with something deeper, something warm and familiar. The kind of scent that pulls you forward without asking permission. I could feel his breath now, slow but heavier than before. Mine matched his without me meaning to. His hand twitched at his side, as though he was deciding whether to touch me, or wait for me to make the next move. The moment stretched. We were suspended there, both knowing exactly what could happen if neither of us stepped back. My fingers hovered at his shirt hem, not pulling, not pushing, just holding the question in the air. And then I stopped. His shirt was warm under my fingertips, the faint weave of cotton brushing my skin as I let my hand rest there a moment too long. He noticed, I could see it in the way his eyes dropped for just a second, flicking to where I touched him, then back to my face. "You always do that," he murmured, voice low, almost amused, but with something else layered underneath. "Do what?" I asked, tilting my head as if I didn't know. His lips curved, but it wasn't a smile, it was more like a challenge. "Act like you're not the one in control here." That made me pause, because we both knew I was. Or at least, I thought I was. Until his hand moved. Just barely, brushing against mine, his fingers grazing my wrist before trailing away, leaving a trail of warmth that lingered long after the touch was gone. My chest rose a little faster. I hated that he could read that. Or maybe I liked it too much. His gaze dipped, just for a second, to my mouth. It was quick, but I caught it. A flicker of hunger, quickly masked. I let my own eyes follow the same path, his jawline, the faint shadow of stubble, the way his lips pressed together like he was holding something back. "Someone will hear us," I said, though the house was empty. "That's not what you're worried about." The words hit harder than they should have. I stepped closer, our shoulders brushing again, this time not by accident. My hair caught on the edge of his shirt button, a delicate snag that made us lean in to untangle it. My fingers grazed his chest as I freed the strand, and I felt his breath hitch. Then, the sound. A sudden click from the door. We both turned, startled, but it was only the wind nudging it shut again. Still, the moment had shifted. Something in him decided not to wait. His hand came to my waist, not rough, not gentle, but claiming. My pulse pounded in my ears as he pulled me closer, so close I could feel the heat of him through every inch between us. And then, his hand stayed on my waist, light but immovable, as if he was daring me to be the one to step away. I didn't. Instead, I leaned forward just enough for my shoulder to brush his chest, a whisper of contact, yet it sent a shiver racing down my spine. "You shouldn't," I murmured, not entirely sure if I meant him, or me. His reply came low, near my ear, warm enough to make my breath catch. "You're not moving." I let my fingers trail along the edge of his belt loops, not pulling, not holding, just hovering there, letting him feel the nearness without giving in. He glanced down at my hand, then back to my face, the corners of his mouth twitching like he'd just won a point in a game only we were playing. The air between us thickened, our movements slower, measured, as if we both knew every inch forward would cost us something. His knuckles brushed the side of my hip as he shifted, and I stepped back half an inch, just to see if he'd follow. He did. "You're testing me," he said. "Maybe," I whispered, letting my gaze fall to his lips for a fraction of a second before meeting his eyes again. His hand grazed mine as he reached past me, or maybe not past me at all. Our fingers caught for the briefest moment, skin against skin, the warmth lingering like an unspoken answer. We circled each other in inches, my hair falling forward as I passed close enough for it to sweep against his arm, his shoulder brushing mine when he shifted toward the dresser. Every movement carried the quiet weight of a dare. The risk felt bigger than the room could hold. Every look, every pause was another line we were close to erasing. Then he stepped closer, no hesitation this time. His hand came up, his fingers tucking a loose strand of my hair behind my ear. He didn't step back. His thumb rested just below my jaw, a touch so light I almost doubted it was real. "You're not going to stop me," he said softly. And before I could speak, he leaned in, his thumb stayed beneath my jaw, light but certain, the warmth of his skin seeping into mine. My breath betrayed me, shallower now, drawn in slow, uneven pulls. His own breathing matched, steady but deeper, like he was holding himself in check. I didn't move, not because I couldn't, but because I didn't want to. His other hand rose slowly, brushing the side of my arm as though mapping the path before daring to travel it. The faint texture of his calloused fingertips against my softer skin made every inch feel magnified. "You always hesitate," I said quietly, tilting my head just enough that our foreheads almost touched. He smiled, a slow, knowing curve of his lips. "Maybe I like watching you wait." I exhaled a laugh, short and low, but it caught halfway, turning into something else entirely when his hand lingered at the bend of my elbow. He leaned in, just enough that I could feel the faint warmth of his breath brushing my cheek. "You're playing a dangerous game," I murmured. "And you're still here," he countered, voice so close I could feel the shape of the words. The air felt heavier now, wrapping around us like it wanted to keep us there. His gaze locked on mine, dropping for a fraction of a second to my mouth before returning, a silent question neither of us was ready to answer out loud. My hand found its way to his chest, feeling the steady beat beneath my palm. I let it rest there, pressing just slightly, testing him. He didn't move back. Instead, he lowered his head until our noses nearly brushed. The silence stretched. I could hear nothing but our breathing, slow, uneven, in sync. My fingers curled lightly against his shirt, holding him there without pulling him closer. Then, his hand slid to the small of my back, the contact burning in its simplicity. The distance between us all but disappeared, only a breath remaining. "Say it," he whispered. But before I could, the sound of the front door unlocking cut through the air like glass breaking. We froze. The sound of the front door jolted us apart, but not far enough. My back brushed the dresser, his hand still hovering near my waist as if reluctant to let go. Footsteps echoed faintly, moving away from the bedroom instead of toward it. Whoever it was, hadn't noticed. We both exhaled at the same time. He smirked, tilting his head slightly. "You jumped." "You didn't," I shot back, narrowing my eyes. "Maybe I'm harder to shake," he said, voice low, laced with that infuriating confidence. I stepped past him, brushing his arm on purpose as I headed toward the small bar cart by the window. The amber glow of the late afternoon poured over the glass decanters. I poured myself a drink, letting the slow swirl of liquid serve as my distraction. "Thirsty?" he asked, watching me too closely. "Always," I said, handing him the second glass I'd poured. Our fingers touched as he took it, a deliberate graze that neither of us acknowledged out loud. We drank, eyes locked over the rim, the silence between sips thicker than any words could be. Then his phone buzzed on the dresser. He glanced at it, jaw tightening. I leaned against the bar cart. "Who's she?" I asked, too casually. He set the phone face down without answering, but the way his lips pressed together told me enough. "Jealous?" he asked finally, that half-smile daring me to admit it. "Not yet," I said, but my voice betrayed me, softer, lower. He stepped forward, closing the gap between us in 2 slow strides. "Then maybe I should give you a reason." Before I could react, his hand caught mine and spun me lightly, a mock dance in the narrow space. My laugh came out sharper than intended, but when his other hand found the small of my back again, the sound melted into something warmer. We moved without music, swaying in our own rhythm. His thumb brushed over the inside of my wrist, finding my pulse and lingering there. I looked up at him, and the flicker in his eyes said he'd felt the quickening beat. Then, my heel caught the edge of the rug. I stumbled forward, my chest colliding with his. His arm wrapped around me instinctively, holding me flush against him. The drink in his hand tilted dangerously, a drop sliding down to his wrist. I caught it with my fingertip without thinking, and when our eyes met again, the air between us was molten. "Careful," I said, my voice barely a whisper. His gaze dipped to my mouth and stayed there. "Not possible," he murmured. The world outside the moment didn't exist. The space between us no longer felt like a question, it felt like an answer waiting to happen. And just as I thought he'd close it. The moment balanced on a thread, his arms still holding me from the stumble, my hands still against his chest. The warmth beneath my palm was steady, grounding, but his gaze was anything but. It was fire and question, want and warning, all tangled into one unbroken stare. "You can let go now," I whispered, though I didn't move. "Can I?" he asked, his thumb tracing a slow circle against my waist. The lightest touch, but it burned hotter than any embrace. I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. His forehead dipped toward mine until they met, just enough to feel the faint press, the shared heat, the electric hum in the space between breaths. "This is a bad idea," I said softly. "Then tell me to stop." I didn't. Instead, my fingers slid up, curling against the back of his neck. He closed his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing it, and when they opened again, they were darker, more certain. We stayed like that, not kissing, not moving, but locked in a stillness that felt louder than any motion. His breath brushed my cheek, my lips, just enough to make me ache for the space to vanish. Then he murmured, "You're not the only one who's been playing a game." I pulled back just enough to search his face. "What's that supposed to mean?" He smirked, tilting his head toward the dresser. "The phone. The unanswered buzz. She's not who you think she is." My stomach tightened, not from fear, but from the sudden shift of the board we'd been playing on. "Then who is she?" I asked. He leaned closer again, voice low enough to vibrate against my skin. "Someone who'd be very interested to know what's happening right now." For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to that statement, the risk doubling, the heat refusing to fade. His hand at my waist pressed lightly, pulling me closer, until our bodies were aligned in every point but the one we hadn't crossed. And just when I thought I'd closed that last inch between us remained, deliberate, sharp with possibility. His words still hung in the air, their weight settling over both of us. I should have stepped back. Instead, I placed my hand over his, still resting at my waist. "Then maybe," I said quietly, "you shouldn't give her anything to be interested in." His smirk softened into something quieter, almost fond. But the fire in his eyes didn't fade. "And maybe you shouldn't make it so hard." I let a small smile slip, shaking my head. My fingers lingered over his knuckles before I gently moved his hand away. The space between us felt colder instantly, but it was safer that way, or at least, that's what I told myself. Without a word, he reached for the belt still lying on the floor, the one I'd dropped without speaking at the very beginning. He held it out to me, his expression unreadable. "You forgot this." I took it slowly, feeling the weight of the leather, the quiet echo of what it had meant an hour ago. Our eyes met again, and for a moment, it was all there, the heat, the game, the questions we'd never answer out loud. But then his phone buzzed again, and this time, he let it ring without looking. "Guess I'll see you later," he said, stepping back but not breaking his gaze. I nodded, slipping the belt over my arm like it was nothing, though we both knew it wasn't. As I turned toward the door, I caught my reflection in the mirror, a faint flush on my cheeks, a curve at the corner of my lips that I couldn't hide. When I glanced back, he was still watching me, leaning against the dresser as if nothing had happened, and everything had. It wasn't over. We both knew that. And as I walked away, the soft thud of the belt against my side was the same sound that had started it all.